The Honourable the Speaker.
Member for Bordersfield South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, once again, thank you for this opportunity for contributing to in this budget debate 2019. Madam Speaker, this is my 12th offering in this Parliament, in this budget debate, my 12th time. Madam Speaker, like the 12 disciples. But before I could present, Madam Speaker, it would be remiss of me if I did not thank the constituents of Port-of-Spain South for the tremendous support that they have shown me over the past 11 years, and especially in July when I was ill. I thank you, Port-of-Spain South. Madam Speaker, I need to respond to the Member of Parliament for Kumuto Manzilina, who indeed made quite a few errors in her presentation. And I want to look at something she touted. The member touted, my apologies, where 18,000 food cards were withdrawn. But obviously, the member didn't quite understand what the Minister of Social Development said. And I want to make sure that the records are clear on this. A recertification exercise was done, Madam Speaker, to determine the eligibility of all the clients who would have been in receipt of food cards. 18,000 of them did not respond, despite many attempts to get at them. They did not respond. One could only surmise that they were not eligible, and therefore they did not come forward. But the minister has advised me that they can still apply and come in and get the means test done. That's the only way that you'll be able to access those cards. And I tell the member for Kumuto Manzilina something. You know, many of them might have been given those food cards out of trunks of cars. Many of them. And therefore, a proper means test was not done on some of these individuals. And therefore, they were placed in a very embarrassing situation that they cannot come forward at this point in time because they probably do not qualify to hold a food card. And Madam Speaker, I'll tell you something. I have a friend, a personal friend, and she's a teacher. And her husband is a customs officer. And she has a food card, a $700 food card. She has a food card, a $700 food card. So, how did she qualify for that? Okay, how did she qualify for that? Madam Speaker, there was a trend in this country, and that is why the Honorable Prime Minister said to us, when we got it in 2015, the day he finds any one of his ministers distributing food cards, you'll be a former minister. Madam Speaker, I want to clear the air on something else that was said by the member for Kumuto Manzilina. With respect to the senior citizen pension, the member did not understand that the proposal, what the proposal was all about with respect to that senior citizen pension. the minister said that an additional 27,263 would benefit from the budgetary proposal. But there's already existing in the system 67,391 members. And that is where that 94,654 has come. That's the maximum, and they're the maximum. They would have been at the maximum. So these are the people now who will now be joining that group, that 27,000.
That's what additional means.
The member for Kumoto Manzilla also said that a parent of a special need child is not eligible for a grant. This is untrue, member for Kumoto Manzilla.
Educator.
That is not true. I've been reliably advised that a single parent who is unable to work because they have to care for a child can qualify for a public assistance grant. Member for Kumoto Manzilla, you also said in your offering that nothing has been done in the constituency of Kumoto Manzilla in 3 years. But remember, I sat here for 5 years, from 2010 to 2015, and your government spent over $400 billion in 5 years. You should have put in a plug then for Kumoto Manzilla. That's right, and Port of Spain South, for 5 years, I got nothing. I got nothing, Port of Spain South. And I'm now being informed again that Kumoto Manzilla got 2 community centers.
2?
2 community centers. And just one more, Kumoto Manzilla. You know, in this house, we have to be careful because at the end of the day, when we leave here, we are all our colleagues and we still have to live in Trinidad and Tobago. And what happened today, I found, was quite disrespectful. That incident with respect to water, all right, and the wetting, and you know, you could go and you could get soaked down, and then you could go to court and get compensation. Remember Kumoto Manzilla now? We are all representatives, And you see, when your neighbor house on fire, wet yours. Wet yours. And we must try our best, Kumoto Manzilla, and all members, to be respectful to each other. We all are striving, all of us here, striving to improve the standard of living of all our constituents. We might take different approaches to achieve that goal, but that is what we are here about. And when I'm speaking, please, I didn't disturb you.
Your contribution this way, and therefore some of the banter will be able to rise above. The director this way.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and I want to respond to the member for Superior. What in absentia? What, you know, that was a wandering. I didn't quite understand. Meandering. I can't find the adjectives to describe what I heard this morning. Vacuous.
Directionless.
I don't understand it. Exactly. No direction. I really can't understand, but I want to explain something to the national community. The member said that she complained a lot about the untimely data, Madam Speaker, that we were not presenting accurate figures and those figures were untimely. I want the member to recognize that it was her government that virtually closed down the CSO, the Central Statistical Office. The staff had to be at home for years. It was only just prior to the 2015 election, March 2015, that the staff was housed. Madam Speaker, but I am happy to announce today, via the Minister of Planning and Development, that the completion of the National Statistical Institute of Trinidad and Tobago bill, in fact, was laid in this Parliament, had its first reading in June, and certainly the second reading will take place very shortly in the House of Representatives. And that has come about because we recognize that the former government paid no attention to the CSO. And so in our campaign, on our manifesto, which is now government's policy, Madam Speaker, one of the institutions that we will establish is this National Statistical Institute. And when we were in opposition, we had to depend on figures from the central bank. We could not get figures coming out of the CSO. Could not get it under the former government. I also want to talk about what the member from Superior also said. She criticized us and said that there would be 5 years, she could predict that there would be 5 years of budget deficits from this side. She also said that our plan, what is our plan? She asked the question, what was our plan? Are we going to balance the budget? But I want the member for Superior in her ramblings to understand that for 5 years, 5 years, we got deficit budget from 5 years, massive budget from the other side. Every single year. And I'm going to answer and I'm going to provide the statistics in my presentation. And the member must understand too that for the 5 years, I was here as the opposition chief whip on the other side. And I remember it was like almost my mantra on an annual basis, Madam Speaker, where I kept asking the former government, what is your exit strategy? Deficit financing is something that is used worldwide. However, you cannot remain running heavy deficits on an every single year. You must be able at some point in time to come out of it gradually. And they did no such thing. Now, I was appalled today to hear the member for Superior so very concerned about the small man budget. Yes. Madam Speaker, I will address some of these issues a little later on in my presentation. Madam Speaker, the government's theme for 2019 is turnaround, and it's very appropriate indeed. The theme turnaround has come on the heels of the 2018 theme, which is changing the paradigm, putting the economy on a sustainable path. And Madam Speaker, we have seen the benefits derive from such an objective. And it was with great pleasure when I read sometime last week where the IMF's outlook for Trinidad and Tobago is very positive. Madam Speaker, it's a small milestone. But we have achieved a lot over the last 3 years. And this, Madam Speaker, I am thankful for. But I am speaking here, but I'm very heavy, simply because, Madam Speaker, we could have done much better had it not been for those 5 years where there was spending and spending, and I should say the 5 years and 90 days of the disastrous rule of the former government. And this government, Madam Speaker, the former government, we must never, ever forget their fiscal irresponsibility. We must never forget their disregard for basic norms. The end result of this fiscal irresponsibility, Madam Speaker, is that they spent over $400 billion on what? You will have your time, Caroni East. Madam Speaker, no new income streams were created to support the unprecedented president. Madam Speaker, please protect me.
Honorable Member for Couva South, maybe if you're looking this way, you'd realize I'm on my legs. Okay? Please proceed, Member for Porter Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, no attempts were made at any form of diversification. You know, I heard the member today from Superior said that we have not brought in 1 single cent of foreign direct investment. But I recall in either 2013 or 14, because I spoke about it in the budget, that there was a whole crew, Madam Speaker. They went off to India. They spent over $15 million. It involved about 6 ministries paying for the trip. They went over a whole plane load, went off to India. I remember well because I was pivotal in that debate. 200 meetings they said they attended, and not 1 foreign direct, not 1 cent in foreign direct investment came back in this country. That is your record. That is your check the answer. That is your record. And today, we are being told, and we're being scolded, that we have not brought in any foreign direct investment. Madam Speaker, may I speak? Please, may I have some silence?
Members again, please control the level of the banter. Member for Port of Spain South.
Madam Speaker, by running these heavy deficits each year, the difference was made up by borrowing. They borrowed as if it were going out of style. And Madam Speaker, I want to demonstrate something here this evening. And it's based on really what the member for Superior said this morning about this huge deficit. Let me remind them of their record. 2011, expenditure, $49 billion. Revenue, $41.3 billion. Deficit, $7.7 billion. 2012, expenditure, $54.6 billion. Revenue, $47 billion. Deficit, $7.6 billion. 2013, expenditure, $58.4 billion. Revenue, $50.7 billion. Deficit, $7.7 billion. 2014, expenditure, $61.2 billion. Revenue, $55 billion. Deficit, $6.4 billion. 2015, expenditure, $63.7 billion. Revenue, $60.4 billion. Deficit 3.4 billion. That was your record. And Madam Speaker, our record. We came in 2015, September 2015. In 2016, our expenditure was $62 billion. Why? It included the $5 billion that they promised the public officers in back pay. And we were committed to it, we had to pay it. They committed this country to that. 2017, our expenditure went from 63 billion, that is their last figure in 2015, down to $53 billion. 2018, $50.5 billion. And 2019, our projection is $51.7 billion. Madam Speaker, and let's not forget the $14 billion from National Gas Company. Up to now, they cannot tell us what they have done with that $14 billion from National Gas Company. And further, over their period, Madam Speaker, $20 billion in revenue we lost as oil prices plunged to below $50 per barrel by 2015. But they continued to spend. They took no action to stabilize the public finances, none whatsoever, Madam Speaker. But I tell you something, we are a real government. And the situation before us in 2015 was quite clear. We cannot spend what we do not have. It was back to basics. If our revenues have been reduced, then we have to bring it in line with our expenditure, Madam Speaker. And that was our new reality. If we did not change the paradigm, we'd have placed this economy on a dangerous path. And as the member for Separia said, that we are the ones mortgaging away this country. But if you had continued in office, and we had continued with your policies, we were the ones who would have been mortgaging away this country, and the debt of this country would have been passed on to our children and our children's children. All that was done, Madam Speaker, we know it was difficult over the last 3 years, but it was, as far as I am concerned, there was minimal discomfort. Things were tight, but we were able to retain our workforce. And you would have heard from the Minister of Social Development, our social safety net remained intact, Madam Speaker. And further still, we did not have to go to the IMF. I shouldn't say we, but the Minister of Finance made our adjustments for our citizens. He made the adjustments for our citizens. And we did not allow the IMF to do it for us. And we could just look next door to our neighbors in Jamaica. And now, Madam Speaker, you know, point up here, when you were speaking, I allowed you.
Projection, please address me. Okay, now, members, one expects that there's going to be a certain amount of banter, and I'm sure all experienced members can rise above that. Please proceed, Port-au-Prince South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Don't let them distract.
Madam Speaker, it's about the third time I have to rise. I have to sit for you to discipline. Madam Speaker, will I get back my 5 minutes, please? Madam Speaker, I recall back in 2015, the then governor of the central bank, Mr. Jawala Rambaran, approached the Minister of Finance and announced that Trinidad and Tobago only had 3 days of cash left in the government's current account at the central bank to run this government. Apparently, he was oblivious to this fact prior to the 7th of September 2015. But, Madam Speaker, through sheer prudence and stringent financial management, this government was able to reprioritize its expenditure to reach that projected sum of $50 billion by 2018. So, Madam Speaker, from a cover of only 3 days to run this country in 2015 to achieving stability and a projected economic growth of 1.9% in 2018 is quite a tremendous task. And that is what this budget is all about. A genuine, real, transparent, economic turnaround for Trinidad and Tobago. This government was able to maintain spending on education, maintaining our social safety net. We have made sure that despite what has happened, we were able to maintain all the benefits to our poor and vulnerable citizens. We did not leave them behind. We stimulated private construction in the housing sector. We have tackled the hard issues like Petrotrin. You have heard from my colleague, the Minister of Energy, earlier today. We have started the deregulation of the fuel subsidy. And we are revitalizing the energy sector. As a consequence, Madam Speaker, of the deregulation of the fuel subsidy, we reckon we realize a savings of some $700 million. And we have intentions, the Minister of Finance is plowing this sum back into the economy. And how is he going to do it? Well, the Minister of Social Development outlined some of the measures. Increasing the food cards. This would cost an additional $29.2 million. Increasing disability grants to cost $78 million. Public assistance grant, $41.4 million. Cap on senior citizens' pensions, moving it from $5,000 to $6,000. That would cost an additional $194 million. Tax allowance for tertiary education, moving from $60,000 to $72,000 per year. This will cost an additional $15 million. Stamp duties for first-time home owners, moving from $850,000 to $1.5 million, which will realize a savings to individuals of $37,000, but revenue foregone by the government in the sum of $12.5 million. Madam Speaker, these are some of the mechanisms that the government would use to give the citizens back some of that money that they would have gotten from the deregulation of the fuel subsidy. I want to commend at this point the Minister of Finance for delivering a budget that presents hope, that presents stability for a brighter future for our citizens. Also, too, how could I forget my colleague and sister, the Minister of Planning and Development? Believe me, no project would happen unless it is under the hands of the Minister of Planning and Development, who works very closely with the Minister of Finance. Thank you very much. So, Minister of Finance, I salute you this evening for producing a socially balanced budget. Our economic indicators are good, Madam Speaker. and we are moving in the right direction. Inflation is low, and despite the challenges, our debt is still manageable. Growth has returned 1.9%. Unemployment has risen slightly, but again still at historically low levels. Our exchange rate remains stable. And finally, there's evidence of even a rebound of some areas in the non-energy sector. I rest my case, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I turn my attention to the Ministry of Public Administration. That portfolio is concerned with modernizing the public service to enable better service delivery and the ease of doing business. It also leads, the ministry is also a leader in information and communications technology, ICT for short, for both the public service as well as for individuals across the country. Every citizen, no one will be left behind in our ICT development plan. The Cabinet has just approved the National ICT Plan for 2018 to 2022. And the plan is aligned, may I say, to our Vision 2030. This plan takes into consideration empowering citizens, and to this end, there are 4 operational ICT access centers in Pinal, in Kumwana, in Marak, and down in Guaya, in your constituencies. These centers, Madam Speaker, allow for persons in these rural communities to access computers which they can use to access information on government services. They can also access ICT training on how to use the internet and the email. There is also Wi-Fi pavilions. So if you have a device, you can go to one of these access centers and be able to access the internet, etc. Since these centers have been open, over 14,000 persons in these rural communities have accessed these centers. Madam Speaker, there are 2 other phases to our ICT plan: competitive businesses and also transformational government. Transformational government is simple. Our e-tax has been a success. We also have TT BizLink, and that's an online platform for trade services. We also have government GovPay. We plan to introduce this in 2019, and this is where the government can receive payments from citizens using various either debit card or credit card. Investments will be made in GovNet to realize e-government services in the coming year. And we're already working with banks and 3 key service providers: Registrar General, IPO Office, and the Licenses Division. Our public service modernization. Madam Speaker, I know that there's a lot of talk about the modernization of the public service, and this has been going on for years. I have been there for 7 months, and I can tell you that this process is a journey, a very long and tedious journey. But in this regard, we have continued our training and leadership programs under the Public Service Academy, impacting well over 1,000 public officers. Madam Speaker, there's a program there called the E-Base Competency Development Program. And this particular program is a pilot project. It is an online training program developed by the Ministry of Public Administration and the University of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's tailored, Madam Speaker, to enhance the need. Okay. It is tailored, Madam Speaker, to meet the needs of the public service officers. To date, there are 4 modules. There's computer training, there's business writing, supervisory skills, and customer service. Over 500 officers to date have been trained. And I want to bring this to the attention of the public, that this particular program, this e-based competency program, has just won an award, the Commonwealth Technology Organization Award, CTO, for Best Application E-Learning. So good things are coming out of public administration, and if you notice, for the past 2 or 3 weeks, we have been doing little things to bring to the, and we'll do it in a sustainable manner as we develop the programs, etc. Because I think that it is one of the, what happens in public admin is one of the best kept secrets. A lot of things, Madam Speaker, would go on there, but the public is unaware. Even when I was not minister, I didn't realize that it was such a progressive ministry, so I thank all the officers there. There is a section there, division, Public Management Consulting Division, and that is the PMCD. And I'm rather intrigued with this particular division because it functions as an internal management consulting agency by providing executive advisory services to the cabinet and government ministries. And they have been doing this for more than 60 years. And it's always a pleasure to read the comments because many ministries, in terms of their staffing and restructuring, they will then write to PMCD to get their views on whether they are going in the right direction or whether it is needed, whether 10 staff will be needed, whether 2 staff will be needed. And it's always such an edifying exercise to read the comments made by PMCD. Madam Speaker, this brings me to the Presidency Department, which is the Property and Real Estate Division. And I am happy to announce that we are in the process of developing an information systems called the PMIS for the first time.
Member for Point up here.
I wouldn't call that word again. Which will provide the government with a full inventory of the property and of all properties under the remit. Madam Speaker, there was a time when you could not have gotten any information with respect to government's properties, be it the privately owned ones or whether they were those lease rental ones. Now, we have completed the phase 1 and we are now into phase 2. And this is to show you how technology is working in our favor. ICT is and it's being done internally, so we do not have to pay. We do not have to pay external consultants to develop the program. Everything was developed inside and being done internally. Madam Speaker, therefore we have continued apace with our national ICT agenda. Citizens and businesses can expect better telecommunications infrastructure from us, more opportunities to use ICTs, and more e-government services, and the ease of doing business. Our public service is continuously modernizing. I said it's going to be a long, arduous task, but we will continue working to upgrade the skills of our public officers. We'll use our ICTs to improve efficiency and effectiveness, and we'll continue, I will say, by doing so, and we will realize value for money. Madam Speaker, I turn my attention to the constituency of Port of Spain South. I am happy to announce that a long-awaited Piccadilly Government School construction would commence sometime in the fiscal year. I'm very heartened as I've seen it in the PSIP. I am also pleased to see the overhead walkover in Silots. Finally. Indeed, this would save a lot of lives of my constituents in Port of Spain South. And you know I have a special place in my heart for Silots. A planned activity center in the Woodbrook area, geared for use by senior citizens in the Woodbrook area. That is also in the pipeline for 2019. And of course, my pet project, the rejuvenation of the East Port of Spain area along Piccadilly Street, is in the pipeline for 2019. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you again. I want to thank you once again for this opportunity. I have touched on the points that I want to make. I want to thank the Honorable Minister of Finance. I want to thank the Honorable Minister of Planning, because I know these projects will be realized under her hands. And thank the Prime Minister for providing us with a visionary approach. And to all my colleagues, thank you for whatever input. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Member for Faisabad.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this 2019 budget debate on an act to provide for the service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September 2019. Madam Speaker, first of all, let me congratulate the Leader of the Opposition, the member for Siparia, and former Prime Minister for excellent contribution. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank my two other colleagues who have made some very sterling contributions.
Yes, please. Please exit in silence. Thank you. Please proceed, Member for Faisabad.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to congratulate my colleagues, the member for Pointe-à-Pierre and the member for Komoto Manzilina, for their excellent presentations. Madam Speaker, I wish to take the opportunity to address a few concerns raised by the member for Port of Spain South, Minister of Public Administration. Member, I know that you felt that you had to rebut the contribution of the Leader of the Opposition. So good it was. And of course, it's the tradition of the House. But you know, Member, I want to assure you that the contribution, the sterling contribution that we witnessed today in the House would have enlightened the members of the public, and especially those stakeholders of Petrotrin and other stakeholders in this country. The members for Siparia is right to be concerned about budget deficits, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And the member for Siparia was merely looking after the interests and advocating on behalf of the future generations who will have to carry the burden of any budget deficits that this government incurs and puts on this country. I also want to raise again the issue that the IMF figures and predictions were not informed by the fact that the Petrotrin with the refinery will be closed, and therefore one has to be cautious in the interpretation of those recommendations and data. I also wanted to look at the issue raised in terms of the expenditure of the People's Partnership Government, and this has always been an issue, but I want to say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that was really money well spent. Those are projects that can be seen. They're all over this country, and in fact, many of these projects that were started under the People's Partnership Government are now being embraced and continued by this present PNM government. In fact, Madam Speaker, many of these projects that this money was spent on would have been in constituencies outside of the partnership constituencies. A brand new health center was provided in the constituency of La Brea, a completely that's the Policy Health Center, brand new constituency of La Brea. They,
Hospital.
of course, that was under the partnership at the time. A completely refurbished health center was provided in the constituency of Point Fortin. I'm sure the member for Point Fortin is very much aware of that. Yeah. And of course, in Carenage, a brand new health center was provided. My colleague, who was the former Minister of Education, also notes and has mentioned that the partnership government built the Rose Hill RC Primary School and began an ECCE in the constituency of Port of Spain South, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yes, two schools in Port of Spain South constituency, as well as the Carenage RC in Point Comana and the Paramin RC in the constituency for the member of Diego Martin Northeast. So I just make those points, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to make the point that the money was spent and was spent equitably and fairly across all parts of the country and to benefit all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. There was also the issue raised by the member for Port of Spain South regarding the level of foreign direct investment. And I wanted to state, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the highest amount of foreign direct investment in the history of Trinidad and Tobago was actually in the year 2014, when the partnership was the Prime Minister Kamala predecessor. I just wanted to correct a few statements that were made as well with regards to the fact that the People's Partnership Government would have halted the economic decline in 2013 and restored the growth and expansion. And we moved from minus 4.4% decline in 2009 to recovery and growth by 2011. I also wanted to mention the fact that the GDP per capita moved from 16,000 in 2010 to 20,900 in 2014. We also created, under the leadership of the member for Siparia, 56,000 new jobs and decreased the unemployment rate to 3.7%. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me move on to a few issues in the budget debate itself. And I must say that this debate does not give me or my constituents in Faizabad much hope for any sort of recovery or any hope that they are going to enjoy a better life or a better year coming forward. The question that ran through my mind as I listened to the Finance Minister's marathon contribution on Monday is, what was this government going to do differently this year, Mr. Deputy Speaker? What would they do differently to ease the pain and suffering of so many of our citizens and to improve their quality of life? The fact is that over $150 billion has been spent by this government in the past 3 years, but citizens are still living in hopelessness and despair. So it appears, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this administration has not got it right after 3 years in office. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wanted to examine from the budget statement. I refer to page 11 of the budget statement, and the minister mentions 9 areas in which his government is pursuing policy reforms. And I just want to draw the attention of the House and the country to 2 of those reforms, 2 of those measures. One of those, and I quote, is reversing the non-progressive values, attitudes, and behaviors such as low productivity and poor work ethos. And the second would be ensuring effective and efficient public service delivery and implementation of development interventions and measurements of results. Mr. Deputy Speaker, these are areas of national life that need to be addressed and addressed urgently if we are to develop as a nation and to achieve first world status. And I know that the member for Port of Spain South mentioned several initiatives that were currently taking place in the Ministry of Public Administration. But reform of the public sector and getting value for money in the public sector, Mr. Deputy Speaker, remains an elusive dream in this country over several administrations, and we are yet to have some direct impact in terms of how we improve the public service. And whilst I take note of the initiatives mentioned by the member for Port of Spain South, I also want to point out that we have a long way to go, and there's still a whole lot to be done. So, you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the question really is that, you know, are we on the track to improving the delivery of goods and services through the public administration? Or is it that Trevor Farrell has come to the right conclusion about us as a people when he stated, as he stated in the title of his book, "We Like It So"? It's very good reading, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Terence Farrell. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I do not believe that this is the case. I believe that we as a people still have to fulfill our potential, and we just need proper leadership, management, and guidance from those who have been given the mandate to take us there. Mr. Deputy Speaker, whilst there are many factors that impact on values, attitude, and behavior, I believe that the reward and reprimand model has been proven to be effective in bringing about measurable change. We continue to experience very poor service at the majority of government institutions, and really one has to wonder what is the reason for this. Is it that because there are no sanctions in place for poor service? Is it there's lack of supervision? And these are really issues that really need to be addressed. In fact, Madam Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I hope that I'm wrong about this. I recently viewed a video of employees combing each other's hair during working hours in what appeared to be a government office in full view of the public. Certainly behavior that is not becoming of those who are paid by the state. So I was happy to hear that the customer service training is taking place, but I want to point out that when I looked at the budget allocation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and the member for Port of Spain South spoke about the Public Service Academy, which is responsible for some of the training. When I looked at the budget, I noted that in 2018, only $736,000 was spent in 2018 compared to $23,640,000 in 2017. Quite a marked difference. So I'm very concerned that on one hand, that we're speaking about training public servants, and yet the budget allocation does not reflect that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we are quite a long way away from improving the public service. There are some issues that I may have raised in previous contributions with regards to the modernization of the public service. And I just want to make note, I note that now the Ministry of Public Administration has created a new division, which is a new line item in the budget. It's called Modernization and the Service Improvement Division. And I really was hoping and expecting that the Minister of Public Administration would have shed some more light on this new division and what the role of this new division would be in terms of improving the public service to the public. I just want to raise a few more issues again for the consideration of the Minister with regards to how public servants work. I know the issue of flexi time has been mentioned, the issue of working from home, and this is especially important, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in view of the fact that we face a tremendous problem in terms of people getting to work, especially when they live in South and Central. And there's quite a bit of decrease in productivity in terms of time spent in traffic, tremendous amount of frustration. And one wonders that when you reach a public office as a consumer, as a member of the public, and you encounter someone who is unfriendly or is not willing to talk to you, whether in fact they are not suffering from the fact that they have been in traffic for 3 and 4 hours, you know. And of course, the price of fuel is going to make that worse, the increase in the price of fuel. So flexi time, you know, staggering the times, maybe some decentralization of government offices. There's really no reason why all of the government offices have to be in the capital city. One can look at moving some of these to other areas outside of Port of Spain, Chaguanas, of course, and San Fernando, of course, and to other parts of the country. And of course, there's always the possibility of working from home now with computers and the internet and so on. So those are innovations that can be utilized very easily. In terms of the traffic this morning, I just want to cite an example. Trying to get here this morning, I would have had to leave San Fernando very early to get here in time this morning, anticipating the traffic. And you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when you reach the Chaguanas, there are 3 lanes. There are 3 lanes from Chaguanas that take you to Grand Bazaar, but can take you straight to the priority bus route. And really and truly, why it is that one of those lanes cannot be modified as an extra lane for the buses, and we can call it a high occupancy lane, where you can have high occupancy lane. If you have a vehicle that has 3 or 4 passengers, you allow them to use that lane. So that will encourage sometimes a bit of carpooling or people cutting back on the traffic. We have 800,000 vehicles on the roads of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, what you are doing by implementing that measure is that what you've done there is just extended the priority bus route. But of course, what that will require, it will require citizens to have the confidence to park their vehicles in Chaguanas. I'm talking about those who come from the deep south. They must have a safe place to park their vehicles in Chaguanas, hop on the bus, of course, and come straight into Port of Spain. And that's going to ease a lot of their traffic and the frustration in terms of getting to work. Another issue that troubled me as well when I perused these documents, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is when I looked at the PSIP document in terms of the allocation and the amounts expended. And I looked at the years 2016, 2017, 2018. There's a very interesting table in one of these documents, the PSIP document. But the bottom line is that in 2016, 7 billion was allocated, but 4.7 billion was expended. In 2017, 5.1 billion was allocated, but only 3.5 billion was expended. And in 2018, 5.1 billion, but 3.5 billion expended. So the pattern here is suggesting that only about 65 to 66% of the PSIP allocation has been expended. And when one considers, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the purpose of the PSIP is really to further and to enhance the development of the country, it is very worrisome. And the question really that comes to mind is, what are the reasons for this gap in the implementation between the allocation and the expenditure? And really the questions that need to be asked and hopefully answers provided. Is it that the approvals are taking too long, either by the cabinet or the ministries? Is it that the funds are not being released, so we're not released in a timely manner? Is it that there was poor project management? And of course, the big question is really, is there sufficient capacity within the public sector to deal with project implementation? And of course, whether the institutions that currently deal with implementation have the capacity. So we know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the importance of the institutions and properly functioning institutions in nation building. I'm happy to hear the member for Port of Spain South promise that the National Statistical Institute will soon be a reality. Of course, having proper statistics and accurate statistics is very important in terms of decision-making and implementing and planning policies and programs and so on. So we look forward to the implementation of the National Statistical Institute, where we can get data that will inform our decision-making in all aspects of national life. So the PSIP, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as we know, is a budgeting and strategic planning tool employed by the government to translate its priorities and plans into tangible programs and projects. And therefore, it is really the delivery arm of the state. And one of the interventions mentioned in that document is the establishment of a project management Information Unit. And I trust and hope that that will soon be a reality, and that we'll see an improvement in terms of the delivery of goods and services. The Ease of Doing Business Index was mentioned by the member for Port of Spain South, but really and truly, we are worse off in terms of that index now than we were a few years ago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We've gone from being number 66, now 102, and therefore we have to analyze and look deeply at why we are falling behind in these indices. So the question really, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that, is it going to be a turnaround, or are we just getting a runaround by this government, Mr. Deputy Speaker? I just want to address one of the issues in the budget statement, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and that comes under the heading of Building Human Capital, and it's on page 103 of the Minister's budget statement. And I quote here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, from the document, and it says that this is regards to health and healthcare. I just want to make a few comments on that issue as I move away from public administration and make a few comments on the issue of the health sector and healthcare. So the Minister of Finance, in his budget statement, has stated, and I quote, "The quality of our public healthcare remains high on our policy agenda." And when I read that statement, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I asked myself, is it really true? Because when I went to the actual allocation in the budget documents, I have noticed that the recurrent expenditure to the Ministry of Health has been cut by over $300 million. I was also very concerned that the allocations to the regional health authorities has been reduced by over $400 million under transfers and subsidies. Perhaps the Minister of Health may have some explanation for this, but it is worrisome, it is worrying in view of the fact that we know that the RHEs are the delivery arm for goods and services on behalf of the Ministry of Health. And the other thing of concern to me was the fact that the expenditure on drugs and other related materials in 2018 was 500 million out of an allocation of 630 million. And this is especially worrisome in view of the numerous complaints that patients frequently would make regarding the shortage of drugs and waiting time for surgeries and so on. So just a few suggestions, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And this is with regards to the number of the unemployed doctors and nurses that are currently in the system. And one of the suggestions, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that serious consideration should be given to matching the output of allied healthcare doctors and nurses to our needs. So we need to have a needs assessment. But I just want to mention the model in Cuba, where I would have visited with my colleague, the member for Barataria San Juan, when he was Minister of Health. And their model is that they have the faculty, they have their medical schools under the direct control of the Ministry of Health. And what that does, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is it allows the Minister of Health and the Ministry of Health to have a direct idea of how many students are graduating. So there is a direct control by the Ministry of Health over those who are graduating. So this is something I would want to suggest that the government and the Minister of Health can look at. One of the other suggestions I would want to make with regards to the training of doctors is for the government and for the ministry and the minister to look at the re-implementation of a 2-year internship. And I'm saying that, Minister, because but it's important, Minister, I'll tell you why. Sure, yeah, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm saying that because I myself was the beneficiary when I graduated many, many years ago, 1983, 84, thereabouts, of a 2-year internship. And what that did for me is that the normal internship is where you rotate amongst 4 specialties: medicine, surgery, obstetrics, gynecology, and pediatrics. That's the standard thing. But what the second year does for you, it allows you the opportunity to do what is called elective training as well. And it makes you, it makes you a better, from what I've seen. It makes you a more well-rounded, a better doctor. You have the experience. And what it does, of course, as well is, it prepares you because many doctors choose the option of going out for private practice. But sure.
Thank you for coming away. Both myself and the former Minister of Health have proposed to UWI a 2-year internship. UWI flatly refuses to do it across the Caribbean. They can't do it for one campus and not do it for Barbados and Jamaica. I have raised this. I have said categorically that a 1-year internship is not good. We need to move to 2 years. It's up to UWI to do it across the Caribbean.
Thank you, Minister. But you see, and that is why I made the point, Deputy Speaker, I made the point that this is not going to happen unless the medical school and the Faculty of Medicines come under direct control of the Ministries of Health. It has been done in Cuba. It's been done successfully, and it's something that maybe has to be taken at the government level, maybe at the CARICOM level to deal with. But I think it's something that needs to be dealt with. But I wanted to go a little bit further, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with regards to the training of doctors. And I want to raise an issue that may be very controversial, and I might incur the wrath of my medical colleagues. But I want to suggest we have a system in Trinidad currently where after 1 year of internship, you are allowed full registration by the Medical Board of Trinidad and Tobago. And what that means, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Minister of Health is aware of this, what that means is that with full registration, you are allowed to go out and open an independent practice where you can treat members of the public. I am very unhappy with that situation. There used to be a tradition where, even though that happened, there would be an understanding and an undertaking that doctors would remain in the hospital and train themselves further before they go out. Of course, part of the problem now, Minister, is that doctors can't get the places, the jobs in the hospital. So I am proposing, in addition to the 2-year internship, that the doctors in training are required to get 1 more year for full registration. There might be some issues with that, especially with regards to doctors who are going to specialize and so on, but there's just some thought, and it's something I'm sure that can be worked out. But at the end of the day, it's going to benefit the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who have to be treated by medical professionals. I just want to piggyback on a suggestion which I know has been thrown out by my colleague from Barataria San Juan, and again, to suggest that specialist training should be available at all hospitals, because we do have that issue with regards to specialists and the unavailability of specialists in the public health system. And I just want to make a call to the member for St. Joseph, Minister of Health, to look again, Minister, at the levels in the San Fernando Teaching Hospital that was specifically designed for teaching with anatomy and physiology labs and so on. They were purpose-built, and I know that they have now been removed. They've now been occupied by the Human Resource Department. And I think that is a situation that needs to be looked at. It's something that perhaps you may want to look at, Minister.
Silence.
Yeah. So, I also think that we need to review the remit of the regional health authorities. I'm throwing out these suggestions because I think that's the way we go forward. Because, managing the health sector is not easy. It's difficult. And we have to think outside of the box, and we have to look at what we are doing and whether it's given us the results that we are looking for. And I think there are two issues that can be dealt with almost immediately, and that is with regards to the issue of hiring of medical personnel. We have 4 RHAs. Each RHA does its own hiring. Sometimes it's difficult to move one doctor from one RHA to the other. I am suggesting the creation of a central recruitment or hiring agency where the ministry has the oversight, you hire, and then you allocate the doctors according to needs within the RHAs. And the other issue, which I know my colleague, when he was minister, had started, is the issue of a central procurement agency for all the RHAs, which is going to bring cost benefits and so on. And even the remit of the RHAs in terms of what they perform, really and truly should RHAs be responsible for building health centers, or doing work that can be done better by others? Should they not be more responsible for the operational aspects of providing patient care and delivery of clinical services? So I think the remit of the RHAs, what they do, needs to be reviewed so that the money that is spent is geared to bring greater benefit to patients. The Minister of Finance went on to say in the same document, and again I quote him, "Our goal of achieving universal health coverage is quickly becoming within our reach, with every citizen having access to first-class health care, with specialist services being provided in an environment of modern primary and secondary health institutions." And again, I take that, I'm thinking that the minister is saying something, but there's contradiction in terms of what is actually happening. And whilst we take note that the government has chosen to complete the ARIMA and Point 14 hospitals, both started under the partnership government, but we are happy that those are being completed, and we are happy that the residents of those areas in ARIMA and Point 14 are going to enjoy the benefits of modern hospitals. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, how then does this government explain to the population why a brand new hospital with the capability to offer first-class healthcare lies abandoned in Vancouver? That to me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is a contradiction in terms of what is said and what is done. So you see, the message here that I'm reading, and I'm sure the population is reading, is that by completing the 150-bed hospital in ARIMA, the 100-bed hospital in Point 14, and it was also announced in the budget that you're going to build a 100-bed facility in Sangre Grande in 2019. I'm very happy. I mean, we're all happy as citizens to know that the health infrastructure has been developed. But then you're telling us that you need more beds. But then really, why do we have 230 beds left empty in the Vancouver Hospital for more than 2 years? And I really hope and trust that when the minister makes his contribution, that we will get some real update in terms of what is going to happen in Vancouver and how soon patients can expect to be utilizing that facility. Because after all, it was built, for the benefit of patients. And again, I'm throwing it out that, like all the other facilities, I know that there's been some talk about being a paying facility. I think the government has to consider very carefully how that model is going to work and who is going to access that facility and what system is going to be used to determine which patients pay and which patients actually use the services at that hospital. So, member for St. Joseph, ball is in your court. The hospital is there. It withstood the earthquake, recent earthquake of 6.9, standing strong, ready to go. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Finance also alluded to the continued improvement in maternal and child health in terms of the government and the ministry meeting the SDG goals. We are all very, very happy for that. This is good news for pregnant women and for citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. But I also think it's important that we look at how this happened. And again, I speak of bridges that are built and, bridging one government to the other. And I think it would be remiss of me if I did not mention the role of the former Prime Minister and the member for Siparia, who had a very pivotal role in starting a process that now the government and the Minister of Health, but not the Minister of Health, but the pregnant women are able to benefit from. And that process started in 2011, following a maternal death in San Fernando, when the Prime Minister mandated the formation of a committee to look and to review maternal mortality. And I think it would be remiss of me, and if you will permit me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because this report has formed the basis, and there are many recommendations that have been implemented by the doctors and the nurses and the midwives in the hospital over the years from 2013 and continuing. And I just wanted to, in fact, the creation of the Director of Women's Health, which is now playing a pivotal role in terms of improving maternal care, would have been one of the recommendations from this committee. But Minister of Health, I just wanted to throw out to you that there are two other issues in this report that you may want to give consideration to. And the one speaks to the audit process for maternal deaths in terms of the creation of a national, independent national maternal mortality and morbidity review committee. That is something that can gather data that will help us to improve healthcare. And the other speaks to a recommendation which may require some sort of legislative change in terms of the recognition that the current law says that if a baby is born under 28 weeks gestation, baby has to be registered as a miscarriage or an abortion. And in fact, and truly now, because of modern technology and improvements, the survival of babies from 24 to 28 weeks. So it really is a disadvantage to these newborn babies, because if that really is something that needs to be corrected, and perhaps, Minister, you may want to look at that in terms of bringing some legislative change to deal with that issue. So I just wanted to add a few more points on the topic of the SDGs, and specifically to address the SDG goal 3.4, which is the reduction of premature deaths from the NCDs through prevention and treatment, and the promotion of mental health and well-being. With regards to the issue of STDs, of NCDs, this is in non-communicable diseases. Big problem in Trinidad and Tobago, has been estimated by some to cost the country and the social cost and otherwise close to about $6 billion annually when you look at the impact of the NCDs. The Fight the Fat program and the No Sugar campaign, started by my colleague, the member for Barataria San Juan, and carried on by the member for St. Joseph, have had, they're good, but the impact is still there to be seen. And I just wanted to throw out a few suggestions, Minister, for your consideration. And again, when I looked at the social sector investment program on page 52, I saw that last year the government would have paid for 554 angiograms, that's a test for blockage of the heart, 125 angioplasties, 180 coronary artery bypass procedures, grafting procedures. And the recurrent expenditure for adult cardiac disease would have been in the region of 20 million. And for kidney disease, for renal dialysis, 24 million, with an allocation of 30 million in 2018, which means that the ministry is recognizing and realizing that there are even more patients that will have to be treated with renal dialysis and kidney failure. The point here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that when we have to expend that kind of money, we are treating end-stage diseases. And therefore, we really have to try and catch these diseases before they require that kind of expenditure. And this is only expenditure in the public sector, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This doesn't take into account what is spent in the private sector by many who, because of waiting times and so on, may choose to go privately because sometimes it can be a life-threatening condition when you get a heart attack. So it really is a big burden on the country, and therefore we have to move, with haste and a pace and with speed in terms of how do we do the preventative measures. And again, I want to throw out a few suggestions which are made in the mid-year review budget contribution, but again for consideration. And I think of it in terms of screening as state screening and self-screening. Now the state screening, the extended hours at the health centers. Under the partnership, there were extended hours in some of the health centers, not all of them. This is something that can be extended, but not only for treatment, Minister, it's something that you may want to use as opportunistic screening. Quite often, people are not going to go to a health center between 8 to 4 when they have to earn a living, and after 4, they may want to go and have their numbers checked. And what can also be of tremendous benefit is to have mobile screening clinics at places on weekends where you have big crowds. Have them in the malls, have them in the groceries, and so on. That is something that can bring benefit. I know sometimes drives are made once in a while, but this is something that can be done every week and can pick up those cases of high blood pressure, diabetes, and kidney failure, and so on, before they become that way. Again, one of the initiatives that I think can make a big impact would be to find a way for the state to get a scale, a blood pressure machine, and a glucometer in every home. I know it sounds like a tremendous amount of expenditure to have it in every household, provided by the state, but I can give you the assurance, and I'm sure, Minister, this is something that eventually will turn out to be cost effective, because you can have patients taking, you can have citizens taking responsibility for their own health. They can do their own numbers, they can measure do their body mass index, their blood pressure, and their sugar, and so on. And you can have those numbers, now with WhatsApp, you can have those numbers sent in to a central center where you manned by your doctors and nurses, who can give advice and deal with the issues. So I wanted the government to think about that, to give consideration. The capital cost might be a bit high initially, but you have to look at the long-term benefits. And because, there's a school of thought which will say, some may think, okay, you have to take responsibility for your own health. But at the end of the day, when these patients get sick and they come into the public health sector, it is all of us, the taxpayers, who have to foot the bill and take care of them. Look also at the issue of maybe giving some tax incentives on gym fees and for gym owners and for the purchase of personal exercise equipment. Very interesting, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I recently saw a video. I'm sure it's not fake news, because these are things that happen in countries abroad all the time. Where in a bus station, there is a sit-up machine. And when I looked at the video, I was wondering, and this guy was holding onto the sit-up machine and doing some sit-ups, and I saw a number coming down, 30, 29, 27, 25, and then it came down to 0. So he had done 30 sit-ups. And at the end of the 30 sit-ups, the machine gives him a free bus ticket. Can you imagine that? It was very innovative, and it's perhaps something that we can look at. It's a good start. Implement it in the bus stations. You give some sort of an incentive for exercise. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I just wanted to raise a few points with regards to the fiscal measures, and this is something that my constituents would have a tremendous concern with in terms of the budgetary measures. And there is a general feeling that this will increase the burden on the middle income and lower income groups, and that it will negate any increases in the food card and disability grants that were announced in the budget. So really and truly, are the citizens really going to benefit from those additional increases that were given? The issue of private, many citizens believe that private transportation is essential in Trinidad and Tobago. We don't have a proper public transportation system, and therefore, until such time as we have a proper working public transportation system, citizens are forced to use their private transportation. It's going to impact on them. Something that was also brought to my attention, which I wasn't aware of, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that, we have been pushing for the use of hybrid vehicles in the country. But did you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that hybrid vehicles have to run at a certain speed to get the benefit from the arrangement? And if they remain in traffic under a certain speed, then the engine converts back to using gas. And therefore, in truth and in fact, in a country where you have tremendous amount of traffic congestion, the hybrid vehicle doesn't give you the benefit that it was intended to create. So that is something. So it means even those who have hybrid vehicles are not going to benefit. They're going to be spending more. They're going to be burning more gas. So this is something that was mentioned to me. There's also the issue of the CNG stations. They move to convert your vehicle to CNG. But one of the shortcomings here is that there are limited CNG stations in the country. In fact, in the south, there are only 3 in Coquille, Rushwood Street, and Point Fortin. And therefore, even if citizens want to move in that direction, then the options are limited. The issue of the 24/7 opening hours for remote health centers, and my heart jumped for joy when I heard a measure. I thought it was all health centers, Minister, but I know you probably can't get theirs yet. But it's a good idea. Of course, it's an initiative, as you would know, that was started in Cedrus under my colleague, member for Barataria San former Minister of Health. But one of the difficulties that we experience in Cedrus is that whenever you have an emergency come to these remote health centers, the great majority of times the patient has to have access to a secondary care facility. So in the case of blanchissaires and so on, they will have to be taken to San de Grande. So it's very important that the consideration is put in place for an ambulance to be on site to transfer those patients. The penalties under the Litter Act, the councillors of the Sipara Regional Corporation have drawn to my attention that there have been no litter wardens at the Sipara Regional Corporation since June of 2018. So the question is that you're going to impose penalties under the Litter Act, but who is going to police this? So again, you have a contradiction here where you're implementing a measure, but you don't have what is in place to deal with it. So the government needs to look at that. I just want to touch briefly on the issue of Petrotrin. As you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Faizabad.
Honourable Member, before you commence, your initial 45 minutes has expired. You have an additional 10.
Thank you. I'll take
Proceed.
Thank you very much, sir. So with regards to Faizabad and Petrotrin, there's going to be a big fallout. Historically, I mean, the labor movement and oil, Faizabad has been very, very instrumental, and there's a great amount of history. And the constituents, those who are employed in the health, in the industry, have expressed their concerns about the fallout. So I want to join in the call by the leader of the opposition and my colleagues who have spoken so far, for the government to consider very seriously whether they are making the right decision. It's going to have a big impact in Faizabad and, of course, on the country overall. If you could permit me just to mention a few other issues within the constituency of Faizabad that require the attention. And there are a couple of schools. The issue of the Forest Reserve Anglican School, Minister of Health, I know, would have answered the question in the Parliament last week, but there's still the situation where over 100 primary school students are yet to be housed, and I trust that that matter will be resolved very shortly, Minister. There's also the outstanding issue of the completion of the Sipari Union Presbyterian School and the Davy Avenue Early Childhood Care Center. The issue of the sluice gates at the St. John's Trace remains a burning problem. We had that issue last year when the floods came, and the residents in that area, are very apprehensive that if the floods come again this year, that the non-function of those gates might be a problem. So I call upon the government to look at that and see if that can be fixed in time to avoid any disasters. In the constituency of Faizabad, for some reason, but I'm sure it's a problem throughout the constituencies, the issue of potholes caused by WASA leaks is a perennial problem. Almost on a daily basis, calls have to be made to WASA to deal with the potholes. And I would want the Minister of Public Utilities to look at that, see how best that problem can be resolved. In fact, recently we had a situation where two motorists would have damaged their vehicles, burst their tires and so on in a pothole, and the residents in the area took it upon themselves to repair the pothole. But of course, this is not something that residents can do all the time. The Otahiti fishing facility, diversification is very important, especially now with the closure of the impending closure of the Petrotrin refinery, the Pointe-Pierre refinery, and the fishing industry in the constituency is centered around the Otahiti fishing facility. And again, I want to call upon the government to resolve the issue. There's a structure there that was built for the use of the fishermen, and for whatever reason has not been opened. There have been various reasons have been given both by the minister and by the residents. But the role of a government, Mr. Deputy Speaker, regardless of the challenges that they face in a particular community, is to get the job done. It's a facility that was built with taxpayers' money, and I really would like to see on behalf of the residents that that facility is commissioned and open for the use of the fishermen. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I close, I just wanted, to reflect again on a budget that really, I would say, that lacks imagination and innovation. It creates no hope for citizens for better health care, for personal security, for economic well-being. I am afraid that constituents are going to continue to suffer. And as some constituents pointed out to me, that Faizabad faces a dark and gloomy future under this government. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am not sure that this is a turnaround budget. I have to agree with my colleagues that we are getting a runaround. And with those few words, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank you again for the opportunity.
I recognize member for Diego Martin Central.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, for allowing me to present here for my fourth budget debate for the fiscal year 2018-2019. I'd also like to thank God for bringing us all here together in this August House, and that we reach home safely, and that he continues to bless our twin island nation, Trinidad and Tobago. I'd like to thank our Prime Minister who has been guiding us through these rough waters. I'd also like to thank the Minister of Finance and his team who would have worked night and day to have this document laid on Monday. His PS and his other staff that would have worked there with the Ministry of Finance. A lot of people don't know the work that also goes in from the Ministry and the Minister of Planning. I want to thank the Minister of Planning for her work as well. All the ministers in Cabinet. You have already heard from 3 so far with regards to what they have done within the last year and what they have planned coming up for 2018-2019. I personally would like to thank all the staff at my Member of Parliament office, the constituents of Diego Martin Central, and of course my family. Deputy Speaker, I could speak on my behalf and of course to those on this side. The budget was laid on Monday, and between Monday and today, I know a number of my colleagues on this side who are members of Parliament were able, of course, as they usually do, meet with their residents in the constituency. I, for myself, could speak for the people of Diego Martin Central, where I was able, thank God, before coming here to represent them, to get some feedback from them on this budget. And we've been bombarded since Monday night, Monday evening, with radio, TV, social media, everybody giving their opinion, which everybody has a right to, with regards to how they felt about the budget. And overall, we have seen that there has been a positive feedback that we've been getting. In terms of the feedback I've gotten from Diego Martin Central, there's a number of points that I was able to pull from a wide cross-section of people, the young, the elderly, different races, different religions, different areas from Diego Martin Central. It would have been too much for me to bring and discuss. So what I did was just to pick out 7 points from the budget that they had feedback on, and some ideas that we could tweak and so on. One of the first points that they were very pleased about, and you would have heard my member and my good colleague, the hardworking minister from Lopino Bonner West, speak about it, was the increase in the various grants that was given. The disability grant and the public assistance grant in particular. People, they actually were making a joke saying that Christmas falling on January 1st this year, not the 25th of December of next year, because most of these things will be kicking in on that date. They were very pleased and happy with the food card, the changes that were made, the increases in the food card, the increase in the cap in pension. A lot of the elderly, a lot of the grandkids, and adults who are taking care of their parents and so on, who are in their 70s, were very pleased to hear that increase in the cap. And they were very happy to see very early in the week after the budget, the agriculture grant, because Diego Martin on the whole, Diego Martin Central, as you know, the 3 Diego Martins are very close to each other, Central, West, and Northeast. We're literally separated by a line in the road, and it's a very densely populated area. that to see that the agriculture grant was kicked in, and there was a lot of young people that came to get information to how to tap into that. So we're very pleased with that. Mature as they are and patriotic, the people of Diego Martin Central, because I asked them this question just to get some feedback, because, you know, those on the other sides, and overall people are trying to be mischievous with regards to the property tax. And they were so mature and they understood and they were respectful and said, listen, you won the election in 2015 based on the property tax and the changes with local government reform. They understand that it's something that has to be done, and they respect that, and they will work very closely with us again when that kicks in. So kudos to the people of Diego Martin Central. Yeah, very patriotic. One of the issues, as you would have known, 6-7 years ago, if you sneeze too hard in Diego Martin, not just Central, but Diego Martin, we used to have floods, right? So that was changed when I became the chairman. But one of the things that happened was we used to have a lot of bushfires in Diego Martin, the entire Diego Martin area. And I used to hear as chairman and as MP, a lot of young people maybe messing around up in the hills and causing these fires, people being lackluster when they're burning their rubbish and not being able to control the fires, and it will spread. And for those who may not know in the public, when you have vegetation on the mountainsides burning, and we used to lose thousands of acres. I remember seeing these helicopters with the buckets and so on, tirelessly through the night to hear them trying to out these fires. Thank God we haven't had any in a while. But we see that happening in a number of other countries and states, California and so on, where they lose thousands of acres. Not only do we lose wildlife, but it also has a serious effect with regards to flooding and runoff, where the water isn't slowed down by trees and the vegetation and so on, so it runs down too quick for our rivers to take. So we're very pleased there. They were very pleased there with regards to the bushfire fines being increased. They went on to give us ideas, because the people of Diego Martin also like to give their opinion and ideas, which I take as well. They needed to get more information, and they were asking if Crime Stoppers, if they could have called Crime Stoppers and so on, to give this information, because they know of people who do it all the time, but they see it and they don't know who to call. So it's something that I'll talk to the Minister of National Security and so on, to get a campaign out there so people could really take advantage of stopping these bushfires. I remember the Diego Martin Regional Corporation actually went out and started doing replanting and actually cutting out fire trails and the steeples so the firemen could have easy access. That's how serious it is in the Diego Martin area. So I'm pleased to hear that. And I'm also pleased to see, pinning on to that, the Ministry of Agriculture starting back the replanting reforestation program, which will also help with these issues with bushfires. So kudos. That was one of the other points that they brought up with those ideas. They were also very pleased to see the increase in the Litter Act by 100%. In Diego Martin, just like many other places, there are people who are not patriotic, who dump tires, who put out the garbage on the wrong days and so on, and it blocks the rivers and stuff. We still see some fridges and vehicles and stuff in the rivers. Again, they were very pleased to see that, and they wanted to get more information, how and who to call. And they were even asking if you will follow in the other point, which I'm going to talk about with regards to the increase with Crime Stoppers, if they report seeing people like that, if they'll also be able to get a $100,000 reward for complaining and bringing that information. But I told him that I doubt that highly. Likely that was for completely different aspect with the people that are wanted. But they were very pleased about the Crime Stoppers reward as well, to try and curb crime, not just in Diego Martin, but the entire Trinidad and Tobago. They were very pleased as well with the increase in the cruelty fines to children, right? Not that I've seen much or heard much in my area, but it does occur sometimes very quietly. And as you know, the children may not have a voice. So this might be something that will assist the young people of Trinidad and Tobago who are suffering silently. The young people were very pleased with the increase in the allowance for tertiary education. We have seen a number of young people in our constituency doing quite well in the CAPE exam, going to UTT, going to UE, going abroad to study, and so on. So this will fall in really, really well with those young people who want to further their education and assist their parents with getting the funding to move forward, to help better themselves, but more so to propel Trinidad and Tobago forward. So these are just a few of the points that they brought up that they found were very pleasing and they were very happy. One or two were, they'll have those who have other issues and stuff. But overall, the feedback that I got from the people of Diego Martin was positive, And this is just a handful of some of the things that they brought up. Some of the things that we have been doing in the Diego Martin constituency. And I want to thank all the ministers who have been involved in these projects. You would have heard the member for Port of Spain talk about the walkover in Beetham, which I was very pleased to see. You all remember that horrific accident that they had over there where several people were injured and passed away. That was promised several years ago, and it's finally being done. It's almost completed. We also see one being done right out here by the Parliament, by the Hyatt, which is going to be done pretty soon as well. But more importantly, what people don't understand with that is it will also ease up with the traffic flow, where it's one less stop at the traffic light. So, you know, there's a time of 30 seconds, I think. We won't have to deal with that anymore. So it'll be a flow of traffic. The reason why I bring that up is we also have an issue, and I want to thank the Minister of Works, because the people of Four Roads, with the new highway that was built, that they were promised that under the last regime, and it wasn't done. He said as soon as that is completed, he's been coming down the line. He did beat him. He's doing here. The people of Four Roads, it is in the budget to be done, and it will be done in the next fiscal year, and we're very pleased with that. We have a number of people that were injured and lost their lives in that walkover as well. The challenge that we have now is to ensure that people are disciplined to use it, because you still see people, ironically, crossing highways right under these walkovers. So hopefully that they'll have the discipline to utilize it. One of the projects are very close to my heart, and I want to thank the Minister of Sport for continuing that project. As I said before, most of Diego Martin Central, Northeast, and West boundaries is a pavement or a white line. We're very close to each other and very densely populated. It's the Diego Martin Sporting Complex. And I remember hearing the same banter from Superior last year about how the contract was done. And I answered it last year, and I'll answer it again. First of all, it's not $200 million, so I don't know where they're getting that figure from. That project was a project that started over 12 years ago. 12 years ago. I played football in that field and won the league there. Mary Boys is from that facility as well. It's called Northern, the original field. And there's a debate among the three Diego Martin MPs whose constituency it lies in. Of course, the Prime Minister won that battle. But my point is, Diego Martin, for how big it is with regards to the population size, does not have any sporting facilities. We do not even have an indoor facility. So this is something that is needed, unlike in Superior, where they built two next to each other, back to back, in Irwin Park. Yeah, right before the election, and hand it over to local government, and up to today, they still cannot maintain it. Two back to back. We could have just take up one and put it in Diego Martin. But the point of the fact is, with regards to the contractor started, the same contractor that is there today, started 12 years ago. I said this last year in the budget. The same contractor put down a foundation and concrete 12 years ago. And those who know building know, when somebody builds a foundation, it's very difficult, if impossible, to have anybody else who come and give a warranty on somebody else's foundation. But more importantly, I remember when I was chairman, I was invited in 2014 by the then Minister of Sport under UNC to do a site visit at that same facility, and he invited the same contractor to start the job. So I don't know why we keep bringing this up again. It's something that is needed in Diego Martin. It's above board. It's not $200 million. When you see the facility will be utilized, it was the home of Mary Boys, the cricket champions, and it will be fully utilized. It was coming in within the budget that was planned previously. And I'm letting you all know, when it's finished this year, there's a phase 2 to come, because we have no indoor facilities in Diego Martin. It always was a phase 2 plan to be done. They removed squatters, and that was part of the plan. So I hope that puts that to rest with regards to the Diego Martin Sporting Complex.
Member for Kufa North,
not $200
please,
million.
There's a procedure to go about that.
Not 199, but
Silence.
The Minister of Sport will deal with that. In terms of health, in Diego Martin Central, we are building our state-of-the-art, and I want to thank the Minister of Health. I work very closely for pushing this. A new health center will be built this year. He told me the sort of turn will happen before Christmas in Diamondville on the Wendy Fitzwilliam Boulevard. And this is something that is needed in Diamondville. For those who know Diego Martin, Diamondville is an aging community. Most of the residents there are 60 and older. Now they could actually walk to the health center to get their checkups and so on. So the people of Diego Martin is looking forward for that. There's a place in Diego Martin called Surprise. It borders, I don't know if you all know that, there's a football field and so on. Surprise is the name of the area. That borders me and Diego Martin Northeast. That area has as much as 50 to 60 residents living there. And they've been there for over 50 years. And it's opposite a secondary school. I don't know if you all know the area called Blue Range, which is one of the more upscale areas in my... They will know that. They will know Blue Range. They still have dirt roads, Deputy Speaker. They still do it. I'm pleased to announce this evening that, and I want to thank the Minister of Local Government, that as of Monday, they'll be coming in to pave, surprise, the ground, they'll be doing a parking lot. In fact, in November is Diwali. That is the field that Diego Martin Central and Diego Martin uses to light Diwali and lights and deers and so on. So they're going to be starting on Monday. They light for Diwali. They light deers for Diwali. And they'll be starting that project as of Monday, and they already started with the Diego Martin Corporation doing School Street, which is opposite. Again, those who know there are main arteries throughout Diego Martin. One of the main ones that a number of you will know is St. Lucian Road. That road wasn't paved for over 10 years, and it was paved a few months ago. So I want to thank the Ministry of Works for that. Along with St. Lucian Road was paved as well after 12 years. Last week, Land Settlement Agency worked with us to give out deeds of comfort to a number of squatters in the area. And they were very pleased to deal with that. We had a number of people finally getting the deeds of comfort, so now they could build and so on. So we were pleased with LSA to assisting us in Diego Martin Central. As I said before, we used to have a lot of flooding in the Diego Martin area. And I want to thank the Diego Martin Regional Corporation and the Ministry of Works for the work that they've been doing, not just in Diego Martin, in all of Trinidad and Tobago, with regards to the cleaning of the rivers and the maintenance of the rivers and so on. So that has also helped us with the flooding in the area. We have a new power grid that was put up in, TNTech put up a new power grid in St. Lucian Road as well for Diamond Vale and for the Blue Range area. And that has been helping with the fluctuation of current, which was causing a number of residents, appliances and so on to blow out. And that was a huge project that was done, and I thank TNTech for that. The Minister of Agriculture, in Cocorite, we used to have a bamboo/wooden pier or dock for years. And quietly he came and we did a project, and he has actually done a full concrete, asphalted, pitched dock for the boats, and he's doing a whole fishing depot in the Cocorite area, and hopefully we could do a sort turning for that as well. But it's pretty much completed. So I want to thank the Minister of Agriculture for that. There was a project that was carried since 20 years ago, 15 years ago under Kent Valley by the West Mall area, Victoria Keys area, to do a flyover. Right? That is one of the projects that the Ministry of Works is hoping to start in 2019, and that again will alleviate some of the traffic issues that we have coming in and out of the Diego Martin area to suffice the 3 Diego Martin constituencies. So we're excited to see that flyover get started as well. When I was chairman as well, is something that I pushed in Diego Martin, and Minister of Local Government is doing a fantastic job. We're to cut costs. We are looking at cutting on the rental that we do. And we're finally going to, in Diego Martin, have its own administrative building starting this fiscal year as well, opposite West Mall, where the office right now that they utilize, they rent. They're going to actually have their own building where they could have their vehicles and staff and accounts and stuff at a central location in Diego Martin, where everybody could solicit the services that they offer. In that same area, work is also carried for 2019 for the first green space in the Diego Martin area opposite West Mall. We partnered with the Port of Spain Regional Corporation to start that project as well, and we're excited for that to start. So there are a number of projects that we are looking at for 2019 in the Diego Martin Central area. I want to thank as well the Minister of Local Government for finally giving us, and most of the different other constituencies, CPEP teams in the constituency. They have made a big difference, especially in the rainy season, where the bush is growing and the rivers have silt and so on, and they've been working very closely with the other agencies to ensure that the area is healthy and clean. So I want to thank the new teams that have been installed, and so far so good. The Minister of Housing, I want to thank you, and the people of Diego Martin would like to thank you, and the former ministers that were there for the completion of Viewford, which borders me and Port of Spain. And finally, that those towers are finally being finished. They sat down there for some time, And as MPs, we know that is the #1 request that we get from residents is housing. So we were pleased that View Fort was being able to be completed, the first phase. There are 2 other towers that are currently being worked on now. And the people of not just Diego Martin, but the entire Trinidad and Tobago are looking forward for the completion of that. And of course, earlier in the year and last year, Victoria Keys and Shakonia Crescent was completed in our constituency. I want to also thank them for the continuous work for the maintenance of the current powder magazine and so on, painting and so on. So kudos to HEC and the Minister of Housing. We are very blessed again, as I said, although it's across the road from Diego Martin Central, but it's really in our area. We have 2 community centers that's going to be built, and it's process of being built right now. In 4 roads, which is in the member of Diego Martin West constituency, but again is a stone throw away from my constituency, and I have a big chunk of 4 roads. I've started work. I want to thank the Minister of Community Development for that, and also in Bagatelle. So Diego Martin is in good footing with regards to that. And overall, Deputy Speaker, the Diego Martin Regional Corporation, the URP, the police, the fire, we all work together in tandem to ensure that the people of Diego Martin Central are safe, that they're secure, that they're healthy. We're doing our best. We're excited about this new fiscal year, and we're willing to work with all the ministers, all the MPs, and all the residents to ensure that 2019 is a fruitful year. And I just want to thank the constituents again for the support, and I remain on the ground and grounded with them to hear their concerns and their ideas that I could bring to the Parliament and represent them. Deputy Speaker, I thank you for your time.
I recognize member for Urupuch West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and thank you for this opportunity to contribute to this budget debate 2019. Before I proceed with the substantive issues with this budget, I would like to congratulate and commend the Leader of the Opposition for his sterling contribution. I would like to compliment Kumoto Manzalina for a very vivacious contribution. The member for Faizabad, soft but very erudite. And the member for Pointe-a-Pierre, most sterling contribution. Madam Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sorry, I have to respond to Diego Martin Central. And I will start perhaps from his last statement. And he said, quietly, the Minister of Agriculture came to his constituency to pave a road for boats and so. Is that so? Right. And I want the Minister of Agriculture to come quietly too in Urupuch West and let him give all those monies that are outstanding to those farmers who have all their crops that have been flooded out, and to this date, they are still waiting for compensation. I want the Minister of Agriculture to come quietly, and let's go down to the Urupuch Lagoon, and let us make it that a tourist site, so we can at least stimulate the tourism sector in this country. Because it's the Urupuch Lagoon, you see, you all don't read. That's what your minister told you all, your Prime Minister.
Member for Urupuch West, again, address the chair and other members. Please be shouting across the chamber. Proceed.
I also would like to respond to Diego Martin Central when he said that people were so pleased with their 100,000 reward. And I'm wondering why people are pleased with this 100,000 reward. When the Minister of National Security said that blood was in the hands of the UNC, the Minister for Attorney General, said that we need the anti-gang bill because we know who are the gang members and we know the names of the gang members. So we just needed that anti-gang bill to go and do what we had to do. The police were begging for it. They said all that. And now you're giving 100,000 reward to tell people, help me. You want help to find these people. And you said before, you know everybody.
Silence.
The other thing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for Degomatin Central said students were very happy to go to university. When how much students could not get gate, Madam Speaker? How many students at this government or the Ministry of Education cut out gate for a number of students? Who is going to benefit from this?
12,000.
12,000, the former Minister of Education is telling me. Then, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Members. Again, members, I would not tolerate the crosstalk across the floor, and Oropuch West address the chair.
Member for Degomatin Central also said there was a walkover, a long-awaited walkover at the BTOM. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that walkover cost $10 million. One was built a similar size, similar dimension, like Diwali Nagar. It cost the former Minister of Works $6 million. Same thing. Then, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the CPEP teams in Degomatin, they're keeping the area clean. Oropuch West, all the CPEP teams have been disbanded. Nobody working in CPEP. So these are the things, Madam Speaker, what we talk about equity, Mr. Deputy Speaker, equity under this government. In fact, the member for Degomatin Central thanked the Minister of Housing. Thank the Minister of Housing, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And apart from the known Sumintra case, Laventry West, there are also a number of other requests or updates for homes in Oropuch West for persons. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will tell you, let me tell how long they have been waiting. Sumintra Suku from San Francisco, 10 years. Tara Samaru Ramcharan from La Romaine, 23 years. 23. And Mr. Deputy Speaker,
Silence.
I am very concerned about this person named Tara Samaru Ramcharan. Single parent, same thing member for Lopino West spoke about a single parent. 2 children, boy and girl. She trying to sell in a little parlor. Teenage children, and she has to separate her boy, the son, from the daughter because they can't live in one home because where she's living cannot accommodate 3 persons. So she have brother, the son, and the daughter don't even have what you call that growing up with the sibling or rivalry or that love. You have to separate them. Yes. So 23 years. Devin Siratan from
Silence.
19 years. Veronica, 16 years from La Romaine. And you know what? Degomatin Central, happy, and he's complimenting.
Member, one sec. Again, members, standing order 53 still holds within the chamber. And again, I'm not going to tolerate no more crosstalk. So please, Oropuch West.
Thank you. Yes.
Member is imputing improper motives against the member for Oropuch East.
So, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yeah.
Members.
The alligator from the Boki Lagoon.
Before I proceed, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with, as I said, a substantive issue, I want to recall and reflect on the first budget statement I listened to here in 2015. It was a day to remember, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I recall the level of passion exhibited by the Honorable Minister of Finance.
Passion?
Passion coupled with aggression. He flicked the pages of the budget statement in such a disputatious and truculent manner as he repeated the words mismanagement, corruption, nepotism, and cronyism. I never forgot those words. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's like a karmic cycle. Words used by the Minister of Finance reflects the reality of the governance today. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, Laventille West, my waterfall in you, stay quiet.
And you know you become very...
Members.
Mr. Deputy Speaker.
One second.
He wants my thing again.
Again, Oropuch West is the recognized speaker on the floor at this time. And again, Oropuch West, once you address the chair, once you continue to address the chair, things will work out fine. Oropuch West, proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker.
You know, you get agile.
And this year,
very agile.
less than a minute into the minister's contribution, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he spoke of the mismanagement under the People's Partnership. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Minister, he had the audacity, he had the gall and the unmitigated temerity to talk about 5 years of mismanagement after his government, for 3 years, spent $160 billion and not a biscuit to show. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, in those 5 years, where he blamed the People's Partnership for mismanagement, the citizens of this country could have seen over 100 new schools, over 95,000 laptops given, 8 new police stations, and I'm going to call where? Arima, Maloney, Piaco, Kumoto, Brasso, Labre, and Maruga. Construction of the Solomon Hochoy Highway, extension from Golconda to Davie. We started the construction of the Arima and Point 14 Hospital. We completed the Scarborough Hospital left by a P&M government. We built a state-of-the-art health facility in Diego Martin West. World-class aquatic center, Hoover. World-class cycling velodrome, Hoover. Mr. Deputy Speaker, time would not allow me to list the achievements accomplished under the astute leadership of Honorable Carlos Esali. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that propaganda that this government has been perpetuating for the last 3 years, that the UNC did nothing, hoping for it to take traction, must stop and stop now. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I ask, who is the author, the editor, and the publisher of the book on mismanagement other than this government? From the procurement of the Cabo Star,
They print a book for the
Ocean Flower 1, Ocean
Deputy
Flower
Speaker,
2.
Standing Order 53-1F. I can't hear. I can't hear.
Members.
Because Couva South and Naparima are making so much noise. I can't hear.
Okay. Members, 1 second. Oropuch West.
You could explain.
And again, Naparima is continuous. Right? It's continuous from since this morning. And Couva South, you were going fine, but I think you are now starting to come to the fore. So please, let's listen in silence. Proceed.
Thank you. So I said from the procurement of Cabo Star, Ocean Flower 1, Ocean Flower 2, where the Prime Minister himself said there was corruption that smelled to the highest heavens. And not to mention the procurement process for the galleon's passage and not even one passenger on board as yet. The people of this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they must be reminded of the Prime Minister's partner, the $100 million in fake oil. So what has this government done in the last 3 years?
Nothing.
What have they done to bring peace, security, and comfort to the people of this country? The people are feeling the change now, where they have to forcibly live in self-imposed jails. Madam Speaker, we look at the government tagline for last year's financial budget, last year's financial year. Changing the paradigm, putting the economy on a sustainable path. The question must arise. Was this government able to put the economy on a sustainable path? Every sector in this economy has collapsed. Now they have come with a new mantra in 2019. Turn around. Turn around and go where? To Fantasy Island, as the opposition had asked? Mr. Deputy Speaker, we usually turn around when we can't find our way, when we have lost our direction. But I want to focus now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, on the incompetence of this Rowley-led government, and I turned my attention to agriculture. I asked what this government has done for the last 3 years to stimulate the agriculture sector. What has this government done to diversify the economy, since we can no longer depend on oil and gas for revenue? We cannot depend on the manufacturing sector since it has contracted. The construction sector has contracted. The only tourists in Tobago are Trinidadians. And agriculture, after 3 years under this PNM government, has totally collapsed. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if we were to look at some of the promises versus the reality under this agricultural sector, I will just, with your kind leave, read a few. The promise under PNM government. 1, establish an appropriate unified structure and governance arrangement for the state agencies responsible for agriculture. What is the reality, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Caroni Green Limited was decommissioned mid-2017. NAMDEFCO has become inefficient and ineffective. The packing houses at Breckincastle and Tabaquite are currently closed. The central wholesale market is 99% complete. However, it has not been opened.
Vine growing on the one in Breckincastle.
2, develop a comprehensive agricultural sector plan with the view to significantly increasing the sector's contribution to GDP and employment. What is the reality, Mr. Deputy Speaker? The rice sector contracted 42%. Almost every root crop on average decreased by 20%. Pawpaw production decreased by 6%. Poultry, dairy, and small ruminants all decreased by at least 10%. And you could get that from the review of the economy 2018. 3, consult with farmers on changes to agriculture policy. Reality, no consultation has actually taken place between the Ministry of Agriculture and farmers. Introduce a wide-ranging program of tax and duty concessions, subsidies, and waivers for agricultural chemicals, vehicles, fishing vessels, equipment, and pest control. The reality, many farmers still waiting for compensation. Mr. Deputy Speaker, those are some of the promises, the reality, the broken promises. And when we look at page 42 of this year's budget statement, I want to quote at page 42 what was said with respect to agriculture and agro-processing. And I quote, I propose to strengthen the framework for boosting non-energy exports and for generating foreign exchange by introducing an incremental foreign exchange earnings tax credit for the manufacturing sector, in particular agriculture and agro-processing. Mr. Deputy Speaker, someone listening to this may try to figure out what is this. In fact, I had to read it a second time to figure out what is this. And one will want to know, what is this tax credit? This might be an incentive, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for a manufacturer and agro-processor. But is the tax credit 1%, 2%? What is it? In fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are talking about incremental foreign exchange earnings. And I would like to know which sensible businessman would export commodities like, take for example, Jamaica or Barbados or the US, receive foreign exchange and want to bring it back to this country? That's a question I'm asking. Because most business persons are relatively smart. And I don't think they will want to repatriate their profits and deposit it into a commercial bank account here in Trinidad, because when you request your own US cash, they are telling you that you have to give them a month's notice. So nobody really, Mr. Deputy Speaker, who are business person accumulating foreign exchange would want to bring it back to this country and declare how much they make, because the easiest thing for them to do is to open a US account in the country that is importing their product and leave that US there. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this incentive really is I will describe it as a bogus incentive for persons. And when we look at, Mr. Deputy Speaker, at page 21, the minister went on and said the diversification of the agricultural sector remains a high priority for this administration. We are creating and sustaining competitive advantages in areas where our capabilities can be utilized to exploit national and global opportunities. What does that mean? Who is really creating and sustaining these competitive advantages in the areas where our capabilities can be utilized? And Mr. Deputy Speaker, this government has been saying this for the last 3 years. And we must remind the public that the Honorable Prime Minister said on June 7, 2018, at a public meeting in Barataria, that diversification is an annoying term. The Prime Minister, he's annoyed to hear the word diversification. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Finance, in his budget statement, wants to diversify, and the Prime Minister thinks it's annoying. No wonder the Honorable Prime Minister stated, perhaps last week, that the PNM is more organized than the Cabinet, because neither one knows what is going on. Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the last 3 years, about $3 billion was allocated to agriculture. This year, there's an allocation of $700 million, a decrease of $2.6 million from the previous year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, by the year 2050, the world population will be 9.7 billion persons. And this is from the United Nations Department of Economics and Social Affairs, June 2017. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's every nation's responsibility to provide food security for their citizens. The food import bill is $5.6 billion. And let us look at what we import here in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is from the CSO trade stats, January to November 2017. Mr. Deputy Speaker, from Suriname, Fresh bananas, $34 million. From St. Lucia, close to $2 million. St. Vincent Grenadines, $2.5 million. That is fresh bananas, Mr. Deputy Speaker. If we look at peppers, sweet pepper, we import close to $2 million, Mr. Speaker, from the USA. And when we look at cabbages, $3 million. And the list goes on and on, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And when we look at Jamaica, the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, I believe his name is Audley Shaw, said that there were growth in 7 sectors in agriculture in 2017. He said that in the House of Representatives on the 5th of May, 2018. He said there has been growth in the production of corn, almost 8%. Banana production, 10.4%. Plantain, 6.1%. Dasheen, 13%. And coconut, Mr. Deputy Speaker, 25%. 25% in Jamaica for coconuts. And here we have in Trinidad, we have a company by the Massey Groups importing bananas from Jamaica. When, Mr. Deputy Speaker, 3 containers of bananas per week, which is 2,700 crates of bananas. When we have the same topography, the same climatic conditions, the same undulating hills that are required for the planting and the cultivation of bananas. Why is it that we have to be importing things that we can grow? Mr. Deputy Speaker, I understand we need to strengthen what you call relations and reciprocity with CARICOM nations. But why use scarce foreign exchange to import a crop that we can produce? Mr. Deputy Speaker, what the Massey groups could have done is that make arrangements with parts of the local producers and see how they can save this foreign exchange unless Massey stores has no problem in getting US, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Because we have potential to cultivate bananas. In fact, only last week, I saw in the Jamaica Gleaner, the 19th of September, where Jamaica has now gotten the green light to export mangoes to the US. And it just has to undergo a process called irradiation. That is all, and they could export. And we have the potential for all these crops, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let us look at a company called Caroni Green Limited. It was an initiative under the People's Partnership in the year 2013, where 5,800 acres of land under Caroni was brought under cultivation for hot peppers. And in the year 2016, pimento pepper exported from Trinidad to the US rose to $7.5 million TT dollars. And there was a solid growth with pepper. What we had, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there was a ready-made market for this pepper. We had a ready-made market in Miami, in New York, and London. It employed about 100 persons with a grant from the European Union, so we weren't using taxpayers' money, a grant from the European Union.
Repeat that.
22 million euros. Persons who were employed at Caroni Green were many impoverished families, single mothers, and so.
Ex-Caroni workers.
Yes. And what did this government do? They shut it down. And what was the justification? The cost of production. That was the justification, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It was cost of production. Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this government, I believe, has imprinted in its DNA that philosophy to shut down, break down, deconstruct, send home. Under This government, Mr. Deputy Speaker, thousands of persons, poor persons who are working for minimum wage, living paycheck to put food on their tables, and books in their children's school bags were sent home. 2 weeks ago in the Senate, I recall the Minister of Agriculture contributing to the payments in the court bill, said that the cost of production at pepper at Caroni Green was $87 per pound. Highest price you get in $3 to $4. And I really wanted to ask this Honorable Minister, where did you get that formula? How you could calculate something and get this formula to say $87 per pound to cultivate 1 pound of peppers? You see,
You want a pay rise in it.
you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, any PNM government that wants to shut down, get rid of workers, that small man, they justify that callousness by saying, you know what, the company not profitable. That is what they did with Caroni 1975 Limited, and up to now, those Caroni workers, they're still suffering from that shock. Madam Speaker, Caroni Green was making $1 million in 2016, $1 million. The auditor's report was there, but the government still shut it down. And one of the markets or the countries that produce hot pepper is Puerto Rico, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Puerto Rico produces hot peppers like habanero and ají caballero. These are hot peppers that when Caroni Green was shut down, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Maria, Irma and Maria, the hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico, destroyed their whole agriculture sector. What we could have done here is absorb that market share because there was already a market there. Because up to today, Puerto Rico still hasn't done anything with its agriculture sector. But you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to do all those things require the use of your cerebral cortex. And one really cannot fathom how you could have something functioning and then shut it down. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have something called Moruga scorpion and Scotch bonnet peppers. What happened to Moruga scorpion? It was once in the Guinness Book of Record to be the hottest pepper, 1.2 million Scoville units. We did not patent it, so we got it taken over for a hotter pepper using our same genetic material and get a hotter pepper, the Carolina Reaper, for 1.7 Scoville units. So you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you have to get into the production of anything, you have to have what is called the intellectual property regulations, And what we could have done with Moruga scorpion and Scotch bonnet pepper, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there's potential for pepper production locally and regionally and internationally. What you find in pepper is an active ingredient called capsaicin. Capsaicin can be used to make rheumatoid rubs and so. It can be used in pharmaceuticals. And you could use it to make the dry pepper flakes. But one of the most important things that you could use capsaicin for, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is to make pepper spray. Pepper spray, Mr. Deputy Speaker, which will turn out to be a multi-million-dollar industry in Trinidad and Tobago. And I believe, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that every woman, every female in this country should be given a pepper spray to put in her handbag. If you cannot get a gun legally, the second closest thing is pepper spray, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Because it's time that women in this country are not slaughtered, they are not raped, and not thrown at the side of the river or drained. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, once a husband knows his wife has a pepper spray in her bag, the rate of domestic violence will decrease. In fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in fact, all those matters you file in magistrate court, and talking about restraining order, and talking about domestic violence. In fact, we will not clog up the magistrate court, and it will help the Honorable Attorney General in getting rid of some of these matters.
Silence. Address the chair.
I believe, honestly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I feel San Fernando East, his Kundalini needs to be awakened.
Member for Oropuch West. What is the meaning of that?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Sorry.
What does that mean?
It is the base of your spine where you need your chakras to open and you can feel the base of your spine.
Once you are sure, proceed. Once you are sure, proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Google it.
Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Yeah.
We also have the potential for the cultivation of pineapples. Kundalini. We also have the potential, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for pineapples. And you know, this morning, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, she spoke about pineapples and the potential. Tableland is a country that is known for pineapples. It's an area, known for pineapples. So what we need to do is quickly patent that sugarloaf pineapple so we do not lose it again, just as we had lost the scorpion pepper. As I said, you have to secure your intellectual property rights, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Because again, all these crops, you have what is called value-added components. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what's the plan for our coconut industry? What is the plan for our coconut industry? Last year budget, there were 4 lines.
Silence.
On coconut rehabilitation and replanting program. From page 50, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I quote, "The coconut rehabilitation and replanting program is developing sustainable coconut-based enterprises. Coconut growers are being trained in new technologies, appropriate agronomic practices are being implemented, coconut estates are being rehabilitated, and a coconut seedling garden using superior nuts." Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for Mayaro, born in Mayaro, grew up in Mayaro, and this whole nursery development had to be in the east coast of Trinidad, which is in Mayaro. I spoke with him, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and we are still looking to see where those nurseries are. We can't find those nurseries. In fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, at page 174 of the estimates, the development program estimates, over the last 3 years, they gave out 2,000 coconut seedlings, the ministry. And you know what it was the cost, Mr. Deputy Speaker? $134,000 for 2,000 coconut seedlings. If you're driving down my area, you see coconut seedlings, you're growing at the side of the road, Mr. Deputy Speaker. You can pick up all that free. But it's $134,000 here.
$60 for one.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, you don't know where and who were given those coconut seedlings.
Somebody get a farmer.
So you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there is much potential for our coconut estates because coconut is a superfood. You have the oils from it, you have the water which could rehydrate because you see now many athletes, I believe the Honorable Attorney General is very active in exercising, and so he drinks lots of coconut water, I believe. So it rehydrates. It is a good. So what you are seeing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that what we have is that if you go to the supermarkets, you are seeing imported coconut water from Guyana. We have the potential here to produce coconut water. Laventille West, why are you engaging in catharsis?
Member Urupuch West.
Yeah.
Urupuch. Again, member,
Mr. Deputy
address,
Speaker.
member, address the chair. Address the chair.
Thank you, thank you.
I would not be able to protect you. Address the chair.
The coconut water industry has great potential, Mr. Deputy
Silence.
Speaker. But we have poor management, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Silence.
When we look at the cocoa industry, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the cocoa industry, at page 51 of the budget statement, there was one line. The cocoa rehabilitation program is focusing on improvement in varieties. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one line, we cannot be serious about diversification and cocoa production in this country. That was the end of cocoa in this year's budget statement. And in fact, Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is admired for the country producing one of the best quality cocoa in the world. At Trinidad and Tobago, the cocoa should be we should be recognized in the world map. But what we are recognized for, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the highest number of ISIS fighters per capita. That is what we are recognized for. Because on the 18th of September, we saw that 2 Trinidadians found to be aiding and financing ISIS fighters. That is what I believe the Honorable Attorney General is moving to impose a Mariva injunction on the assets. But I will move on. And don't let me digress, because we have to talk about the cocoa and how our production has fallen from 500 metric tons now, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In fact, the Tobago House of Assembly, they had some some rural programs for URP workers. They wanted them to rehabilitate some of the cocoa estates in Roxborough. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, 200,000 square meters of land, which if you calculate it, 200,000, you multiply that by 10.76, and then you divide it by 43,576, you'll get close to 50 acres of land. And you know how much cocoa they get? 145 pounds. 145 pounds of cocoa from 50 acres of land. We are really serious in this country about rehabilitation of cocoa and taking the URP workers and taking them down to this estate, and 145 pounds. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Trinidad produces one of the best quality cocoa in the world. It is called Trinitario, and it's a mix or genetic combination between Forastero and Criollo. It's 2 different types of cocoa. What we have, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is 2,100 genes of cocoa in Trinidad, and yet we cannot turn it into chocolate. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we command a premium price, Trinitario cocoa, of 5,000 US per ton, compared to 2,000 for bulk cocoa. And you're telling me we cannot really rehabilitate these estates? In fact, under the People's Partnership, there was a incentive bonus, $2 per pound for cocoa beans, and if you increase and exceeded your production from the previous year by 25%, there was an incentive to give you $3. And I'm not sure what happened to this incentive. I believe the P&M shut it down too. So that is, I want to remind you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about this guy named Hariman Chattagoon. I think he's from the constituency of Tabaquite. He and his son produced over 25 tons of cocoa, bagged and ready for export. and it's still there because the Cocoa Development Company, they cannot source any international market for them. It is rotten there, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yeah. And we should be known, Mr. Deputy Speaker, just like Champagne is known for France and Scotland for whiskey, we should be known for Trinitario brand of cocoa. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if we look at access roads, during the 2018 media review, there was an appropriation of $20 million for access roads in Trinidad, $20 million. And in Tobago, $240 million was spent in road to build access roads. $240 million. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when I calculate this, it means that roads are being built all in the sea in Tobago. Because I don't know where you could take $240 million and you have no access road. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I had lectured to many Tobagonians, and they live in Tobago. And I asked them, I called them and asked them for access roads for agriculture, and they said, not a single access road. So what we need to do, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we need to ask the THA where the $240 million gone. Just as Mr. Manning would say, where the money gone.
Follow the money, follow the money.
So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you're building things in Tobago, I have absolutely no objection for building roads.
Member, your initial 45 minutes has expired. You have an additional 10. Get your avail. Proceed.
Until Western Sanford, I know he's a recover yet.
So, in those 10 minutes, Mr. Deputy Speaker,
the energy hasn't been awakened.
there's a... Okay. When we look at the rice farmers in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there's something called Maruga Hill rice. I saw 3 ministers run down to Maruga to give somebody by the name of Mark Fortuny a check for $317,500 to do research on rice. To do research on rice. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have different ministries, different sectors or subsectors under the Ministry of Agriculture that get allocation for research and development. Take, for example, CARI, $16 million. What do they do? Research and development. Sugarcane Feed Center, research and development. We have a separate research and development unit under the Ministry of Agriculture. But this person here got this money to do research and development. And then, Mr. Deputy Speaker, an additional $50,000 given for this same person to find what is called geographical indicator. So we're trying to figure out what is that. Geographical indicator, Mr. Deputy Speaker, just like if you lose your phone and you beat them and you have the GPS and you could find it, this is you trying to find rice. You pay a man $50,000 to find out the origin of this rice. And they know that the Americans had brought the rice. So you give so 317 plus 50 to find rice.
367.
367. And you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker,
As a slush grant.
that is what we call a slush grant, just like the scholarship grants. And you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I believe if we had given Scooby-Doo, that he would have solved that mystery and find that rice. And we saved that 50,000. Yeah.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in fact, there's an agro-processing unit set up in Maruga, costing $77 million, you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker. $77 million. But there was an existing processing plant in SFC, and what does this government do? Shut it down in SFC. And you want to go into agro-processing. What do you process? Agro-processing means you have excess of what you have consuming. Anytime you have excess of a commodity, you do it for agro-processing. Which commodity we have in Trinidad that is in excess supply to do agro-processing? We do not, the Prime Minister himself, 2 days ago, said that we do not have enough tomatoes to make tomato paste. Well, I am saying we don't have enough cucumber to do cucumber pickle. We do not have enough corn to make cornmeal. But you set
Silence.
up a company with $77 million to do agro-processing for one of the partners. 77, and not what is the procurement process? What's that? It was tendered. Who are these people building this thing for $77 million?
What the process?
And your own Prime Minister, our own Prime Minister is saying we cannot do agro-processing. We do not have excess commodities in this country. The processing plant at SFC was canning and freezing and doing the same thing that this plant is set up to do. So why are you doing something you know that is not going to take off on the ground and remain as our next white elephant to give to who? Right. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Standing Order 48-6.
Members, member, you care to clarify?
Just ask a question.
Hold on, no. What?
Yeah.
I'm asking the member to clarify.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for Oropouche West implied that there was something nefarious about the payments that were made.
Members, I recognize.
Yes, the member did. I am on my legs. You would
Member,
like to say something?
Member, please, listen. One sec, just 1 sec, 1 sec. 1 second. I have recognized the leader of the House in order to expound on the standing order that she raised. And I'm only recognizing her at this time. Proceed.
Yes, thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The member for Oropouche West indicated that the money that she's referring to was for a partner, a partner of somebody on this side. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, as far as I am concerned, that is imputing improper motives.
Okay, 1 second. Member for Oropouche West, unless you are willing to expound on what you said, I would like you to retract that statement, please.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I did not implicate anything. Yes.
1 second. With regards to the statement of stating that for their partner on that side, is either you expound on it, more information, or if not, you retract it. I want no explanation, either or.
I'll move on.
Statement?
It will retract, yeah.
Okay, proceed.
Yeah. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Wait, Chief Whip, please, hold on 1 second. Chief Whip, it has been continuous. All right? It has been continuous. Please, Oropouche West.
Thank you. Also, I believe 2 days ago, the Honorable Prime Minister said that we do not have enough land to do agriculture. I don't want to quote his whole, perhaps it's a whole paragraph, and my time is running. But you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there is something called vertical farming. There is something called innovation. And there is something called ICTs. That is what our leader of the opposition, her thrust was always on the fourth industrial revolution. And what that does is that you do not need land for all the crops that you want to plant. All green leafy vegetables, Mr. Deputy Speaker, can be grown in what is called vertical farming. It is what is called controlled temperatures. control environment, from the seeds right on to the full-grown plant. And one has to understand that agriculture is a science. Agriculture, you need to know the physiology of a plant. So using this method of vertical farming, at every stage of the plant, the nutrient is given to the plant according to its needs. And also, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you have what is called LED lights that imitates and mimics the sunlight, so the photosynthesis goes on. But you see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Prime Minister believes it's 1956 when you're obsolete and thinking about just going to plant land or doing an aluminum smelter. This is not now, this modern technology. This is not about backward. You don't take retrogressive steps, you move forward in this 21st century. And that is what we need to do. We have to get out of this whole obsolete idea about everything is land. In fact, if you have so much land, in fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we do have land, you know. So some of the crops that do not need the land, like the green leafy vegetables, like ground provisions and so, and whatever crop other than the green leafy vegetables, you use the land. But they are using the land now to build homes and houses. So if you cut down the St. Augustine nurseries...
Remember, you have 2 more minutes.
So those are issues, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you have to know how to manage and how to run things efficiently in a country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Leader of the Opposition and to go along and support and throw some light into this 2019 budget to say really it is a budget with no turnaround, Mr. Speaker, but it is one of running around. That is what it is, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is nothing of substance, this 2019 budget, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And with those few words, I thank you.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to Monday, the 8th day of October at 10 a.m., at which time we will continue debate on the appropriation bill.
Members, I have not adjourned the sitting as yet. Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Monday, the 8th of October, 2018 at 10 a.m. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Monday, the 8th of October. No, members, no. Listen, on a serious note, let's continue to ensure that the decorum of the House is maintained at all times. We are all anxious to go home, but please, let's ensure that the procedures are carried out efficiently. Fair enough?
Yes, sir.
Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Monday, the 8th of October, 2018 at 10 a.m. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Monday, the 8th of October, 2018 at 10 a.m.